say. It's so provocative that there's every temptation to kind of just follow on and have another opportunity. So thanks, Peter. It was a stimulating talk. The subtitle for my presentation today might be something like this: Now Know Myself. The argument that I'm going to be making in a kind of an indirect way because of time constraints is that the education that I'm focusing on is not only the education that happens in schools and formal institutions. I want to make an argument that we need to look at education birth through death, and generally people like to editorialize on that and say pre-birth through post-death. So take it where you will. The key thing today is let's think about our own education. Let's think about personal sustainability. Think of sustainability in the social and in the physical sense. And think about education and its ripple effects. As I know myself, there's the opportunity to influence those with whom we interact, and in so doing, educate others as well. Often when I'm thinking about what I'm going to talk about today, I like to focus on people who are more toward the end of their lives as we know it right now. And the obligation we have to educate our parents and to educate our grandparents while we're educating ourselves and our young children, even those who are yet to be born. I'd like to start with a meditation, and before we get into the meditation, I need to just explain a little, because it won't be the standard breathing meditation. I want to incorporate some of an art that is Jinshinjutsu, and I would like to also incorporate some Nobel laureate level science, incorporating the work done in 1998 that won the Nobel Prize in Medicine. And we'll talk about that a little after we've done the meditation. So first, let me show you what I'd like you to do. Stay here. When we start, I'd like you to grasp the thumb on the left hand, and it would be handy to close your eyes. You don't have to start right now, and you don't have to close your eyes right now. When we start meditation, and we will do just 2 breaths. Normally, I would say do 5, but it would take too long. So we just try 2, and it would be like this. When we do that, we will then move to the index finger, then to the middle finger, then to the ring finger, and then to the pinky. We will finish by holding our hands together like that, pressing one palm against the other, and we will take our 2 breaths. And that would be the end of the meditation for this morning. It'll take us a little less than 5 minutes. Ordinarily, we would then go to the other hand and we would repeat. And so we would end up with something that would be close to, a 10-minute meditation or something like that. So I ask you now to join me in the meditation, and we'll start with the thumb. Let us begin now, and it would be helpful to have your feet flat on the floor. Concentrate. Make sure that you keep your mouth shut for the entire episode. You would breathe in through your nose and out through your nose. Let us begin. to suck their thumb, and they give them we call it a dummy in Australia, or a pacifier in the United States, and of course it defeats the purpose entirely. And so sucking the thumb reduces worry, but it develops the stomach flow. And that's what young children need. They need to be able to digest the food, the protein, and so on. As you get older, you need to hold the thumb a lot more, and we'll be talking about the problem of stomach acid. Yeah, it makes the microphone go funny too. We'll be talking about stomach acid a little bit more today. The spleen flow is also very, very important. I need to hurry a little, or I'll not get off this slide. Fear is very, very important. A lot of people will argue it is at the base of all disease with a hyphen in it. All health projects can be traced back to fear. So being able to extricate yourself from fear, to harmonize fear, is very, very important. And so holding the index finger is a very important thing to do. There are other body flows associated with that finger. I've only listed two because they are absolutely critical: bladder and kidney. And if these are not harmonized, enormous health problems can develop. But large intestine is also associated with this finger. And of course the large intestine is associated with all of our teeth problems and gums and things like that. So holding that finger can help a lot. Anger, the gallbladder. You know what we do when we're angry, we give the finger. And so harmonizing the anger also will harmonize gallbladder and liver. And of course, if your liver is out of harmony, all sorts of stuff can happen. Sadness, lung, and large intestine. I said to somebody yesterday, if you're having trouble breathing because of the altitude, hold your ring finger, because it will help with your breathing, because it will harmonize the lung flow. And then finally, pretense is an interesting kind of an attitude. Australian women are well known for trying to do too much, trying to take control of what their children do. In the good sense of the term, just trying to do this, trying to do that. If you're trying to all of the time, watch out, because you may just have a heart attack. And holding the little finger is what you hold if you have a heart attack, and it's also what you can hold to prevent heart problems. And so holding the fingers, harmonizing the fingers, can in fact harmonize all of the body energy functions. So doing this meditation is extremely powerful in a preventative sense. Doing it twice a day makes a lot of sense. And extending it a little bit is better than shortening it a little bit. But doing it once is better than not doing it at all. And so there are always decisions you're going to have to make. And so I thought you would be interested in that particular meditation. I'll talk about the humming in just a moment. Bowl used this picture, or one like it yesterday. I'd quickly like to just show you how this fits into Jin Shin Jutsu. In Jin Shin Jutsu, we have what is called the main central vertical flow, which brings the energy into the body and moves the energy out of the body. Moving the chi into the body is an important thing to do, and it's called the main central vertical flow. So the energy will come up the back with the in-breath and go down the front with the out-breath. You put your hand on the crown chakra, which is just like that. Right on your little patch if you have one. If you don't, just right on the top of your head. Okay? And then the second place to put your hand is right between the eyes of the third eye here. Never press hard in Jin Shin Jutsu. It is a soft touch therapy. If you're not doing it, you should be doing it. So please put your hand. Okay. You move from there to the tip of your nose. next, you go to the throat. Just right there. And if you're pressing down on the bottom part there, you're in about the right spot. And with me, I'm just timing myself. Okay, so we go from here, keep the hand there, on the throat. And next, we come down to the third rib. And so it's level with the nipples, and it's in the center. And so it would just be here. You can count down to the third rib. Okay, we're good now. You can stay there. From the third rib, we come down to the base of the sternum, solar plexus, if you will. Beneath that, we go to the navel, and beneath that, we go to the pube area. Don't do this on the train, you get arrested. And then finally, we come to the coccyx. Coccyx is the tailbone. Very, very important in Jinshin-jutsu. And so you finish up with one hand, it's like a sandwich. The pube and the coccyx, and that would finish it. So there are the 7 steps, and you would do that with the in-breath and the out-breath again, humming. And as always, keep your mouth shut. Keeping the mouth shut. Okay. She's breathing through her mouth. This came from a study that I was doing. It was a study being done in a teacher's college or a university doing teacher education, actually, in Australia. And we were looking at a person, Donna King, to give her a name, and she was teaching with a finger pulse oximeter on her finger. We were looking to see how the physiology changed as a result of teaching. We were shocked. The pulse rate went very, very high at times. But the thing that shocked us most was that the oxygen levels in the blood often went below 90%. On a plane, the masks come down, the oxygen masks come down at 92%. So if you're teaching with a blood oxygen level of 82%, probably you're not going to be healthy for long. You wouldn't want to teach for that long. And so what we were noticing was that Donna's voice started to become very staccato when her blood oxygen went down, particularly on the vowels. It would be an, in, on, that kind of thing. The prosody, the nice flowing voice, vanished. Her face became bland, no longer facial expressions of emotion. And we had to go back to the vagus nerve and the importance of the vagus nerve. And we had to invoke polyvagal theory to see that her neuroception, the detector in the body, which is on the vagal nerve, was detecting threat. Her body was under threat because the oxygen was too low. And so it flipped from the social communication channel, which is very highly developed in mammals, to the reptilian vagus, which is associated with fight, flight. And so she went into fight, flight mode. And so you lose the ability to differentiate human voice from other voices, to express facial expression of emotion, and the cortisol levels go up in your body because you're going to flee or you're going to fight. And so we were interested in that, and we wrote a paper or two on that. And then when I was looking at the videotape one day, I thought, my goodness, she's breathing through her mouth. Does it make a difference? I had no idea. Yoga teachers go either way. Gurus go either way, but then gurus get lost on the mountains too, I noticed today. So, so what to do? What to do? For me, this is me. I decided I would do some study, know myself, right? I noticed that I sleep with my mouth open. I suddenly become very, very thirsty in the night. I snore. And I thought to myself, is this good? Is this not good? So I taped down my mouth so I would keep my mouth shut. And night after night after night I was doing this because I wanted to teach myself to sleep with my mouth shut. I searched the literature, and to my surprise, there was a Nobel Prize awarded in 1998 to some Americans, and it had to do with nitric oxide and the impact of nitric oxide on the body. It turns out that 97% of the nitric oxide produced in the body is produced in the fold associated with the nose, in the nasal cavities. If you breathe through the mouth, you manage to avoid nitric oxide in the body. And that turns out to be a bad thing to do. If you're going to avoid the nitric oxide, the walls of the blood cells are hardened. You cannot absorb as much oxygen. Nitric oxide softens the walls of the blood cells, allows them to expand to contain more oxygen that then goes to the brain and does all the things that it's supposed to do. Of course, they use this information about nitric oxide to produce Viagra. That is shocking, isn't it? There's this extremely important finding that was used primarily in the production of Viagra. We could go down that path, but let's not. The important thing from a health point of view is there is value in breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Now here's the bit that's really staggering. If you hum on the out-breath, you increase the amount of nitric oxide in the airways 15 times. 15 times. And so it substantially boosts the amount of nitric oxide in the body. Salient to the talk today is that if your oxygen levels go low, you flip into fight-flight mode. If you're avoiding nitric oxide, you will flip into fight-flight mode. There are 3 levels, by the way. The 3rd level is freeze, and that's when you faint. So when the blood oxygen gets so low, you get giddy and you fall down, the freeze mode. Remember with reptiles what they do, they freeze and they feign death. The problem with mammals is that it's hard to sustain life when you get into the freeze mode. So it's very, very damaging to you to avoid that. So a quickie is to do a meditation where you hum on the out-breath, and it will flip you from fight-flight back into parasympathetic functioning, which is where you want to be. You want to be in the parasympathetic, unless you're going to have a fight. I mean, if you're in a fight, then by all means breathe through your mouth, because you may need all the energy going into your muscles. I have been studying not only Jin Shin Jutsu, I've been studying iridology for the last number of years, and I'm now certified in iridology. And what it is, most people think it's quackery, they think it's nonsense, but it's another very rigorous knowledge base. And basically what it says is that you can learn about the body functioning by examining the iris and other parts of the eye. What I've put here, just, I got this from the web just so that I would have it today, is this is the normal size of the pupil. When you get into sympathetic mode, fight, flight, your pupils are dilated. In some cases, it'll just be one pupil is dilated. In either case, know yourself. If you look in the mirror and your pupils are dilated, time to meditate. Don't leave it until you get on the train. Meditate on the train. Make sure that you meditate when you get signs of sympathetic functioning, unless you're in a fight. When you're in a fight, you will have dilated pupils. Even if it's just an argument kind of fight, The cortisol levels will come up, and it's not healthy to have high levels of cortisol for too long in your body. And so, know yourself. Iridology has charts. These are very kind of complicated charts, and the physical body is mapped onto the irises. You can look to see if you are at risk for diabetes, for example, by looking in the eyes and seeing what's going on in the eyes. If you're having liver problems, it will show up in the iris, the potential for problems. This is like a genetic map, a predisposition for problems. It's very complicated, and so you can see existing conditions, and I'll talk about some of those in a minute. This is my iris. What you do is you use macro photography to look, and in my case, you will see around the edge here a very unhealthy eye. This is a cholesterol ring, and what it shows is a predisposition for high levels of cholesterol. Be careful, Tobin. Watch your diet. Be vegan. Don't eat meat. Do lots of exercise, or the consequences will be dire. There's worse news. The cotton wool balls that you see there around the eye, you see those little cotton wool balls? That is an indication of a lymph system that is under stress. It's actually being invaded by a fungus, Candida albicans. Candida albicans is necessary. You need it in the digestive tract. We have it in the digestive tract, but if you're starving the Candida, it will leave the digestive tract and come to somewhere where it can get nourishment. In most cases, it goes to the lymph system, and it clogs up your lymph system, because instead of eliminating the wastes, you will feed the Candida. And so when you have this symptom, which I have, you need to get rid of the Candida. It's important to do. This is the digestive tract in here. Mine's a little bit orange, which is an indication of pancreas problems. Watch out, Tobin. Diabetes is in your future if you don't watch. It's also in my past. I can look to see I have grandparents who had diabetes, and I have uncles that had diabetes. Even though I have blue eyes, and it's unusual for blue-eyed people to have this disposition, I have the disposition. So looking in the eyes was a good thing to do. Oh, I have low stomach acid. How do I know that? Back here, if I open out the lens, I won't do it, if I open out that picture, you know how you can with a high-density picture? There will be a shadow that you can see around the pupil border. A shadow around the pupil border is an indication of low hydrochloric acid. It turns out to be one of the most undiagnosed problems that humans have. Doctors are good at diagnosing too much acid. They are pretty pathetic at diagnosing low acid, and most of us have low acid. Oh. In my case, here are the symptoms that I had. Bloating and feeling overly full 30 minutes after eating, food allergies, rosacea, you know the rosacea, the red broken blood vessels that people told me are there because I'm from Australia and too much sun. It's because I have low acid. Broken blood vessels, I have one here and one there. It's a little sign, low acid. Cracked and ripped fingernails in there. Rectal itching. It's uncomfortable to say it, but I had rectal itching. Candida albicans we talked about. This is important here. Chronic H. pylori infections. This is something that we just call food poisoning, right? And we need high levels of hydrochloric acid to deal with food poisoning. If you travel in Nepal, carry hydrochloric acid tablets, because if you don't, you may get food poisoning. The tablets that I take, I've been taking, so that's pretty much what I want to talk about today. Know your body. I'm not saying abandon the Western system. I have a very nice Western doctor. She's Chinese. She understands about Chinese medicine. She understands well about Western medicine. She prescribes faster than you can talk. And so she'll prescribe very heavy medication which kills off the biotica that you want to be protecting you. And so we had interesting conversations, and I asked her, please, would you test to see what my hydrochloric acid is? And she had no idea. And so it was something that I could educate her about. I am having a test right now, it's a genetic test, to see whether my candida problem has been solved. It looks as though it has. When I look in the eye, I don't see the candida anymore, and so I'm having a genetic test which takes 6 weeks and cost me $150. So these things are there in Western medicine. What am I using? And I'll just quickly sum up with this. I'm using Jinchijutsu, I'm using iridology, and I'm now learning keto acupuncture because it can contribute a lot in terms of the flows and where to hold softly to improve a lot of things before they become problems that have to be surgically dealt with, or worse, dealt with high-hitting steroids like prednisone, which you don't want to be taking if you can avoid it. This is just a lovely picture that I thought would make you feel good. If you wish, you can go to my website, go to a thing called Reset, and you can download a PowerPoint presentation. It's a little bit longer than this, it's the longer version. And I will have a draft of the paper, but not for a few days. I'm going to finish it off in a couple of days. So that's it. Any questions? Looking at that, one of the slides I took out had the chakras, and associated with each chakra there is a frequency that creates a resonance to bring energy through the particular chakra. It starts high and ends up low as you go lower in terms of frequency. And my feeling is that it does. Some of my students are looking at that. When we do the humming in like a seminar setting like this, you'll hear things like and at the same time so you will hear that all around the room, and it's very, very beautiful to listen to, and it's amazing how you change. So you change because of the surrounding context, and so we're looking at that. We've actually been analysing the frequency distributions to see if they line up with the frequencies that are recommended in the chakras. And we have a scholar here, I can't remember his name, but from Nepal. He's not here today. He's an older man, the guy that showed us over, remember the cultural sociologist that showed us over, well, last time, the old man who is well known, Tej Shamur. I have his name, but in the longer version, but he's looking at colour associated with the chakras. And of course the colour is associated too with the frequency. So I think you're onto something, and I'm not surprised that in the monasteries this is common knowledge that predates the Nobel Prize. And we don't care so much about the nitric oxide, but it's kind of interesting that the nitric oxide is very, very unstable. You know, the chemists will know that it doesn't last for long. And so you're always having to refurbish it, and it would be very, very interesting if certain frequencies facilitated even more production of that. But I don't know is the answer. Any other points here before I get sat down? Too late. Yeah. Yes, sir.